My name is Deanie Dempsey, and I've been a military spouse for 38 years. I've been asked to talk about deployments and homecomings, and so I'll give you some of my experiences. Our first experience with a large deployment, Marty had been in the Army for 15 years at that point, was Desert Storm. And before that, we had just done normal 30-day gunneries or reforgers. But the first real test was Desert Storm. We got the word only about a month before he was to leave that he was going to leave. We were already forward deployed. We were stationed in Germany, and we had 3 kids at the time. And this deployment was different in that we really didn't know when they left how long they were going for, what it was going to be like. You know, there was all the talk about the chemical weapons with Saddam, and it was frightening, obviously, for all of us. But he left along with a lot of tears from 3 kids and a spouse that, like I said, the unknown was very, very prevalent at that time. And there was no real family support groups and things like we have since gotten to know. I think we learned a lot of lessons during Desert Storm that helped us in the past 10 years. So he came home from that deployment, thank God, after about 6 months, and much joy and hugging and celebration in the Dempsey household. Then fast forward to 2003. Marty and I had been stationed in Saudi Arabia starting in 2001. We flew the week after 9/11, which again was a little bit unnerving, but we were there, and Marty was doing his job when the war broke out. He went straight from Saudi Arabia to Iraq to command the 1st Armored Division. And I was in Northern Virginia living in a hotel where I'd been for 4 months because I'd been evacuated from Saudi Arabia. So I flew from there to Germany. That goodbye, needless to say, when I left him was pretty sad. I was going to Germany by myself this time, no kids with me. Got over there, and we had all thought, oh, it might be 6 months. But that was the famous boots on the ground 1-year deployment. So they found out in about September, October that they were going to be there a year, and they had left in May. So Marty actually started R&R. There had been none up until that point, but a lot of the commanders didn't get to take it because we were too far along in the deployment already in order to get them all through. So, and then yes, as luck would have it, they were also extended. So it was kind of funny. I was talking to a bunch of the ladies, and they were saying, you know, they were hearing on CNN that the division was going to be extended, and I kept saying, no, you know, I'm talking to Marty. I know he'd tell me, and sure enough, that night, Marty called, and I said, don't tell me what I think you're going to tell me. And he did. He told me they were going to be extended, to which, of course, I cried and got my act together, and the next day we decided to do a VTC. The division was across about a 3-hour ride in Germany. Got all the spouses together, and I spoke. Well, our chief of staff spoke first, and I had asked Marty if I could say a few words after because I knew this was going to be a tough one to swallow. And so the chief of staff started in his normal kind of just matter-of-fact, you know. And so then he said that I wanted to say a few words, and I did. And as I started, I felt that lump in my throat and started to fill up because I'm watching all these wives who, at that time, all the spouses were wives. Heads going down, tissues coming out, hugging one another. And I just thought, oh my gosh, how are we going to get through this? And so I just talked to them for a bit about how amazing they had all been up until this point, and it had been a successful deployment, and if we could just kind of hang tough for a little bit longer, kind of my best cheerleading routine, I think. And at that point, we kind of agreed we'd do it, and the lights went out, and I thought nobody was there. It was dark, and our Rear D commander, who was sitting next to me, looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" And with that, I just started to really cry. And I heard, "Deanie, Deanie." And I looked around because I had thought they had all gone away. They had not. They were watching me. And one of the voices said, "Deanie, this is Bomb Holder. We're with you and we love you." And I knew at that point we would get through that extension, and we did. And that homecoming was just amazing, as you can imagine. I hadn't seen Marty at that point for 14 straight months. So I can still recall the butterflies when he came from behind the screen where they were all waiting. And I didn't wait, I just ran to him. So, and we had given yellow roses to every returning soldier, a bunch of the spouses, and I made it a point to kind of make sure everybody was welcome. We had designated huggers for those that maybe didn't have a spouse there or a mom, because again, we were over in Germany. So that was that deployment. Then, about 10 months later, Marty found out he was deploying again, and this time for 2 years. I was not happy, to say the least, and was kind of questioning how I would get through another 2 years. And it was different in that it was not a whole unit going, it was just him. So that had differences of its own. But, you know, again, there's a lot of support in military communities, and I had my family and whatnot. So, and the difference between this one and, say, Desert Storm, which I didn't elaborate on. In Desert Storm, we had little to no communication with the guys. I think I spoke to Marty twice in 6 months. It was the old-fashioned letter writing. The kids and I all kept journals, as did Marty. This time, when he was over there for the 2 years, I spoke to him almost every day, which in some ways was good, in some ways maybe wasn't. But and half the time there really wasn't anything to say other than I just wanted to hear his voice and the "I love you," and so that got us through that. During that 2 years, though, both our son and daughter deployed. And as hard as it is to kiss your husband goodbye for a deployment, to kiss your son and then your daughter goodbye absolutely rips the heart out of you. And yet, on the other hand, you're just so proud of them for what they're willing to do. And I knew they were trained by the best, and I knew they were ready, but there's still that mother's worry. So our son left. I was not there at his welcome home ceremony because he had gotten married before he left, and I, being a spouse of someone deployed, I knew his wife needed to be the first one there to hug him, and so I went out about 2 weeks later just to be able to hug him. And then when my daughter left, she was stationed at Fort Hood. She was not married at the time, and so I did fly out for that welcome home. And again, I can still feel the excitement in that gym at Fort Hood with all those families waiting, and they would announce, you know, the plane has landed, they're on the bus, they've just entered the gate, and the anticipation and all was just building. And so I was thrilled to be able to be there and welcome her back and again, just hug her. Then we go a little bit further. Marty came back from the 2 years, and we went to CENTCOM in Tampa, Florida, and he was the deputy commanding general and then was made the acting commanding general. During this time, Caitlin, our youngest daughter, deployed to Afghanistan for 15 months, which is way too long, again, for a mom. But Marty was the CENTCOM commander and, of course, was traveling over there. And so I felt good that at least he was getting to see her periodically, and he even got to promote her to major while he was there. When she came home from that deployment, I was not there. Her fiancé was there at that time. So I waited and again saw her a couple of weeks later to be able to give her a hug. Then 2 years ago, my son deployed again, this time to Afghanistan. And at this point, he had 3 little girls. And so I got to see this deployment not only as a mom, but as a grandma. And I wasn't there when they said goodbye, but I was there when he came home for R&R, just by sheer luck. And as I watched those girls as he came around the corner and ran to him, and again, it just melts your heart to see what all these families go through with these multiple deployments. He is home, safe and sound. He did one more deployment to Kuwait this past summer. So right now, I'm happy to say all the Dempseys are home. I am one of the lucky ones that my husband, my son, and my daughter all returned. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't think of the families that lost someone. And they were always in my thoughts and prayers. And I'm just so proud of all military spouses who have gone through multiple deployments just like that. This story is not different really from so many who are much younger, don't have that experience, or, Marty and I have now been married so long that there's something to fall back on, where I think for some of these younger spouses it's just so hard. And I just want them to know how proud I am of them, and I'm proud to be called a military spouse. I'm one of them. So thanks so much.